Up next, we have a session, Steady by Design, a RISE framework for leading through volatility. It's crafted for leaders who want to navigate uncertainty with confidence. Please join me in welcoming our speaker and bronze sponsor, MK Palmore, founder and principal advisor at Apogee Global RMS. He leads with a mission to empower organizations through enterprise risk management, cybersecurity, and leadership transformation. In this session, MK will explore how executives can identify hidden risks, anticipate disruptions, and build strategies that keep their organizations resilient even in the most unpredictable environments. Expect practical frameworks, actionable insights, and real-world examples that will help you lead with steadiness, clarity, and impact no matter how volatile the market may be. The stage is yours, MK Palmore.
Good morning. I find the reference in the last session to the game of chess being played in risk environments to be rather apt. You will notice the presence of the knight in many of the logo features for the company that I run, because I am of similar belief in the importance of understanding that there is absolutely a complex game that's being played, and it's incumbent upon us as stakeholders and leaders to engage, understand how to play that game, and understand how to win. So over the next several minutes, I want to challenge an assumption that most leadership cultures carry without ever naming it. The assumption is this: managing risk and taking risk are opposing impulses. That careful people and bold people are different within the organization. They are not. And the leaders who understand that distinction are the ones who remain steady when the environments are not cooperating. I spent my career at the intersection of national security, cybersecurity, and enterprise risk. The Marines, the FBI, Palo Alto Networks, Google Cloud, and my current role as the founder of Apogee Global. And the lesson that keeps repeating across every one of these environments is this: steadiness is not a personality trait. It's a design choice. Today, I'm going to show you the design. Here's the illusion that most leadership teams live inside. They believe they are managing risk. What they're actually managing is their anxiety about risk. And those are fundamentally different activities. Look at the two models on the slide. On the left, risk avoidance. It feels like the responsible choice. You say no, you hold, you protect. But every time you say no to protect the organization, you are also destroying optionality. The organization becomes slower, more brittle, more fragile over time. On the right, calculated risk management. It feels really uncomfortable. That is the point. Discomfort is the price of flexibility. The organization that embraces calculated risk becomes more precise and more adaptive, not despite the comfort, but because of it. Most executive teams spend their entire careers on the left side of the slide, believing they're actually on the right. This is the core thesis. Risk management and risk-taking are not opposing forces. They are the same discipline, applied at very different points of the decision cycle. The best operators I've worked with in the military, in law enforcement, in the C-suite, are simultaneously the most calculated and the most decisive. They do not choose between caution and boldness. They use one to enable the other. So how do you build that capability? It comes down to three disciplines: The framework has three parts: risk decomposition, how you break apart what looks overwhelming; emotional calibration, how you manage the internal variables that distort your judgment under pressure; and strategic patience, knowing when the best available move may be no move at all. Let's take it one at a time. When the complex threat hits, a major breach, a regulatory action, a market disruption, a leadership failure, the brain does something rather predictable. It treats the entire threat as one monolithic problem. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels connected. And the executive either freezes or makes a reactive decision that addresses symptoms instead of causes. Decomposition breaks that pattern. Identify the components, the parts of the threat. Every complex risk has a technical dimension, operational dimension, reputational dimension, and a regulatory dimension. They are not the same problem. Name them separately. Apply what I call the controllability filter. For each component, ask a simple question. Can I control this? Can I influence it? Or can I only monitor it? Those are three fundamentally different categories that require three fundamentally different responses. Redirect your energy. Act decisively on the components you can control. Influence what you can and monitor the rest without letting it consume your bandwidth. Here's what I have observed across 30 plus years as a professional in high consequence operations. Most leaders waste 80% of their energy on the components they cannot control. Decomposition stops that. It turns a paralyzing situation into an addressable problem set. This is the discipline that makes people uncomfortable. Good. Your emotional state, fear, anger, excitement, fatigue, even optimism is not a personality trait that you are stuck with. It's an operational variable. It directly affects the quality of every decision you make. And like any other operational variable, it needs to be measured and it needs to be managed. I want to give you a tool. 3 questions. I call it the calibration check. Question 1. What am I feeling right now? Just name it. Don't judge it. Don't suppress it. Name it. Is that feeling proportionate to the actual data? Not the narrative in my head, not the worst case scenario, the data. If I remove that feeling entirely, does the decision change? If the answer to question 3 is yes, you have a calibration problem. You're not responding to the risk, you're responding to your anxiety about the risk. And now, you're back on the left side of the first slide, making the organization slower, more fragile, and calling it responsibility. This is the hardest discipline for action-oriented leaders. And most of you of this room, I assume, are action-oriented leaders. So hear me carefully. Strategic patience is not passiveness. It's not hesitation. It's not waiting because you don't know what to do. Strategic patience is the calculated choice to hold position when the cost of premature commitment exceeds the cost of delay. That is risk calculation, not a temperament. The tool here is what I call reversibility. Before any consequential decision, you have to ask yourself one question. How reversible is this? If the decision is highly reversible, then your response should be to move fast, learn, adjust, and iterate. Speed is your friend. There's no penalty for being wrong early on a reversible decision. If the decision is poorly reversible, patience is the discipline. Wait for better information. Do not let the pressure to appear decisive push you into a commitment you cannot undo. Most consequential decisions, the ones that actually determine the trajectory of an organization, live in the messy middle, the gray area. And that is where leaders collapse under pressure. The reversibility filter prevents that collapse. Let's take a lesson from what might be a very knowable, probable situation. A scenario that many of you have likely lived through. A critical vendor discloses a breach, exposing customer data. The board wants answers in 24 hours. Your legal team says, stay silent. Your CISO says, go public. Two credible advisors with two very different recommendations. What do? Follow the framework. Let's decompose this. This is not one problem. It's four. Technical exposure, regulatory obligation. What does your customer base expect? There's a contractual liability, and each one has different answers. Treat them separately. Second, calibration. Where's the urgency actually coming from? The data or the board's anxiety? Because if the breach is already contained and notification timelines have not yet been triggered, the 24-hour deadline might be entirely self-imposed. It might be anxiety masquerading as a deadline. Apply the patience filter. Public disclosure is poorly reversible. A premature statement that turns out to be inaccurate does more reputational damage than a 48-hour delay to confirm scope. Waiting is not weakness here, it's actually precision. This is not about being slow, it's about being precise when the stakes are at the highest. Now, let's describe what happens when you don't have this framework. Without decomposition, leaders treat every crisis as a single monolith threat. Resources scatter. The real vulnerability goes unaddressed while the organization fights symptoms. I've watched organizations spend millions responding to the wrong component of a breach because no one has stopped to separate the technical problem from the reputational problem. Without calibration, fear is what drives decision cycles. The loudest voice in the room oftentimes wins the debate. And the post-crisis review, if it's honest, reveals that the data never actually supported the chosen path. Without patience, premature commitments lock the organization into positions that become indefensible as new information emerges, and the cost of reversal exceeds the cost of the original threat. Every organizational crisis I've investigated in the FBI or while in the private sector shares the same root cause. The decision maker was responding to emotion and not information. So how do you prevent that? You scale these disciplines from the individual leader to the organization. These three disciplines don't just make you a better decision maker. They reshape how your entire organization engages with uncertainty. The first mechanism is what I call permission cascade. When you, as the senior leader, model decomposition instead of demanding instant answers, you give every layer of the organization to think before reacting. And something remarkable happens. Bad news actually starts to surface earlier. Because people are no longer afraid to bring you incomplete information. The second mechanism is to break the silo tax. This is the core of what we do at Apogee Global, what we call the nexus of risk. Cyber is talent risk, is reputational risk, and is operational risk. They are not separate categories managed by separate departments. They are, from a cause standpoint, interconnected disciplines. Leaders who see those connections make structurally better decisions than leaders who let each risk live within its own silo. The third mechanism is risk fluency, not risk tolerance, fluency. The capacity of an organization to have honest, rigorous conversations about uncertainty without triggering paralysis, blame, or performative urgency. Let me say that again. The capacity of an organization to have rigorous conversations about uncertainty without triggering paralysis. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen this live and in action in environments where either lives have been on the line or, in the company setting, reputational damage or high revenue has been on the line. An organization that treats uncertainty as a navigable condition rather than a crisis that can be survived. So let me pull it all together. 3 individual disciplines: decompose, calibrate, hold, each with a concrete tool you can use this week. And 3 organizational multipliers that scale those disciplines across the enterprise. 1 framework, 3 disciplines, enterprise-wide impact. Now, I want you to leave with a diagnostic. 3 questions. Answer them honestly. When was the last time someone in your organization said, "I don't know," without immediately qualifying it, hedging it, or apologizing for it? Question 2. When was the last time a team recommended not acting and that recommendation was treated as valid rather than as a weakness? And 3. When was the last time a risk assessment actually changed a strategic decision, not confirmed one that's already been made? If you, as a stakeholder and business leader, cannot answer those 3 questions with specific recent examples, your risk culture is likely a performative one. And you are more exposed than your dashboards might suggest. Steadiness. It's not a trait that you're born with. It's a design choice you make. How you process information, how you manage the internal state, and ultimately how you build conditions for your team to engage with uncertainty rather than to run from it. Here's your homework, because every session should have homework. At your next leadership meeting, before the first decision is made, ask one question. Are we actually responding to the risk that's present, reading the data, or are we responding to our anxiety about the risk? If your team can answer that honestly, you've already started building the framework. As you walk away from this session and others and think about risk management in the teams that you lead and in the environments that you're leading in, I hope you'll take away the points of this particular discussion and operate on the basis of data using the framework offered, and I wish you luck in your endeavors. Thank you.